teaching of this Moses then very well organized themselves in their community, and therefore in the psyche of the beings of all other communities of that period, this same property called envy began to be crystallized in relation to the beings of this community. And so strongly was this property crystallized in them that even after the flow of many of their centuries, when the Hebrew community already ceased to be organized and powerful, and this former powerful community came to an end, as occurs there, according to law, to all powerful communities, then not only was this relation towards the beings of the descendants of this community on the part of the beings of other communities not destroyed, but even in the majority of them, the feeling of envy towards them has already become organic. The third religion, founded on the teaching of Jesus Christ, very soon became in its primordial form so widely spread that almost 1/3 of all the three-centered beings of this planet were its followers. But thereafter, they began gradually to strip also this religious teaching based on resplendent love, and transformed it into something also resplendent, but already, as our dear Mullah Nasruddin says, into a resplendent Terra Sakabura from the fairy tale Kasawaji. In the case of this great religious teaching, indeed, it also happened among them that its followers divided themselves on account of exterior details of small importance into various sects, and came to be called not just Christians, as all the first followers of this teaching called themselves, but Orthodox, Severodox, Ipsilodox, Hamilodox, and various other cognomens also ending in dox. And into this teaching of truth and verity, they began also to mix, for various egoistic and political reasons, fragments taken from other religious teachings already existing there, but fragments such as had not only nothing in common with the teaching of Jesus, but which sometimes even flatly contradicted the truths this divine teacher taught. They mixed in it a great deal from the teaching of Saint Moses, which by that time had already been thoroughly distorted, and much later, namely during the period which contemporary beings there called the Middle Ages, the so-called elders of the church inserted into this Christian religion nearly the whole of that fantastic doctrine invented by those learned beings in the city of Babylon, who belonged to the school of the dualists, about which I've already told you. The elders of the church in the Middle Ages probably inserted this last doctrine for the convenience of their own shops, and for the shops of their assistants, because of the famous paradise and hell contained in it. And therefore, at the present time, in place of the teaching of the divine teacher Jesus Christ, in which, among other things, was revealed the power of the all-lovingness and all-forgivingness of our Creator, suffering for beings, it is now already taught there that our Creator mocks the souls of those who follow this teaching. Dear and kind grandfather mine, explain to me, please, what is meant by elders of the church? Asked Hussein. They call elders of the church there those beings who become professional dignitaries of the highest rank of any religious teaching. Having merely replied thus laconically, Beelzebub continued further. By the way, I may tell you here that among a rather small group of terrestrial beings, the teaching of Jesus Christ was preserved unchanged, and passing from generation to generation has even reached the present time in its original form. This smallish group of terrestrial beings is designated the Brotherhood of the Essenes. The beings of this brotherhood succeeded at first in introducing the teaching of this divine teacher into their own being existence, and subsequently, in transmitting it from generation to later generations, as a very good means for freeing themselves from the consequences of the properties of the organ Kundabuffer. Now, as regards the fourth great religion existing there now, which arose several centuries after the Christian religion, and was founded on the teaching of the full of hope Saint Mohammed, this religion at first spread there widely, and it might perhaps have become eventually a hearth of hope and reconciliation for them all, if these strange beings had not stirred this also into a hodgepodge. On the one hand, its followers also mixed into something from the fantastic theory of the Babylonian dualists, but on the other hand, the elders of the church of this religion, called in this case Sheikhs Islamists, themselves invented and added to it many things about the blessings of this notorious paradise, which, as it were, existed in the other world. Such blessings as perhaps could never even have entered the head of the chief governor of purgatory, his all-quarters maintainer, the arch-cherub Helk-Gamatios, even if he were deliberately to try to imagine them. Although the followers of this religion also, from the very first, split into many different groups and subgroups, which, by the way, continue there even up till now, nevertheless they all subscribe to one or another of its two independent, as they are called, schools, which were formed at the very beginning of its arising. These two schools of the Mohammedan religion are called there the Sunnite and the Shiite. It is very interesting to note that the psychic hatred of each other formed in the psyche of the beings who belong to these two independent schools of one and the same religion has, on account of their frequent clashes, now been transformed completely into an organic hate. Beings of certain European communities have, during recent centuries, greatly contributed by their incitement to the rise of this peculiar transformation of that strange being function. And they have employed and continue to employ this incitement in order that the animosity between the beings who follow these two independent schools of one and the same religion should increase, and that they should never unite, since if this were to happen, there might soon be an end there for those European communities. The point is that nearly half of the ordinary three-brained beings there are followers of this Mohammedan teaching, and only as long as this mutual hatred exists among them will they mean nothing terrifying in the sense of reciprocal destruction to European communities. And hence it is that accidentally arisen, newly baked communities always rub their hands and rejoice when sparks fly between the Sunnites and the Shiites, because they then count on a long and secure existence for themselves. Now, as regards the fifth teaching, namely the teaching of Saint Lama, also a genuine messenger from our endlessness, the teaching of this sacred individual was spread among those three-brained beings there who, on account of the geographical conditions, scarcely ever happen to come into contact with other beings of this ill-starred planet, and in consequence have scarcely been affected by the abnormally established conditions of ordinary being existence there. One part of this teaching also its followers also soon changed and destroyed, but its other part already more or less entered into the existence of this little group of